Hello, everyone, and welcome to another webinar. I'm Paul Leslie, content creator here at Zero Bounce, and the theme of today is how to win with email. So I'd like to know two things from everybody who's tuned in with us today. First of all, would you like to win with email? And where are you joining us from? It always blows my mind how many people across the globe are joining us. Thank you so much for coming here. But let us know where you're coming to us from. Denver, Colorado, East Lansing, Michigan, McKinney, Texas, Vancouver, Washington, SoCal. Brandy got the instructions. Yes.
Yeah.
Sarasota, Florida, Silverthorne, they're pouring in. Germany. There's our European audience. Okay, so let's get things going here. How to win with email. It involves a lot of different things. It involves a bit of trends, design, and even psychology. We're going to be exploring the strategies for design, copy, and deliverability, and more. And if you're wondering if this webinar is being recorded, it is. It's going to be on YouTube later. Thank you, Stephen. Will this recording be provided? Absolutely. And we're going to have time for plenty of questions. So by no means is this a one-sided affair. Please let your questions come pouring in. We're going to try to get to absolutely all of them. So it's my pleasure to introduce yet again the Chief Operating Officer at Zero Bounce. Brian and I have done many of these together. I always learn something new. I've got a really good feeling, especially about this one. Brian is also a very accessible guy. You can connect with him on LinkedIn. Don't be shy. And it's my pleasure to introduce Kevin Vaudry, Director of Sales and Marketing at Campaigner and SMTP. Kevin is a man with a lot of knowledge. He has more than 20 years of experience with sales and digital marketing, with companies ranging from early stage startups to the Fortune 100. And to tell you about the two companies that are presenting today, Zero Bounce is the #1 email verifier for more than 400,000 clients, everyone from Netflix to Disney and Sephora and everyone in between. And I know that many of you all are Zero Bounce customers, and we thank you for that. And to tell you a little bit about Campaigner, it's all the basic and advanced email features that marketers require at a competitive cost. And so I think a question a lot of people have been wondering about, just to get right into it, is there have been some updates. Things have changed. The email world is such that you could fall asleep for a couple weeks and you're in a totally different ecosystem. Are there any updates, whether it's with Google or Yahoo, or what's going on in this email world that we're in?
Yeah, I can start there, Brian, if you don't mind.
Sure, go for it.
First of all, a quick thank you to everyone who's joining us today. And I heard East Lansing, so my niece goes to MSU, so quick shout out there and go green. I always keep up with what's happening there. Yeah, things have changed. They started changing last year, around about this time last year, actually. Gmail and Yahoo started introducing some new filtering, some new requirements, and I guess just a general enforcement of requirements that had always been there related to spam complaints and unsubscribes. So, things got a little bit more difficult, or a little bit more regimented is probably the better word for it, when it comes to your discipline around, the content that you send, and keeping your spam complaints and your things like your hard bounce rates and your unsubscribes in line, which is where for hard bounces, things like Zero Bounce absolutely come into play. If I think about this year, we're definitely seeing a continuation over what we saw in 2024 in terms of enforcement. Right now, Yahoo is doing some updates to its filtering, which is definitely causing a little bit of a disruption for ESPs across the industry. But things seem to be smoothing out a little bit, is the latest update I've got. But I think the thing to note most is, patience is absolutely required right now. You may not be able to ramp up your volumes as fast as you want to, but if you keep your best practices in place, which I know Brian and I will absolutely talk about while we're here, you can typically see good results from your email marketing. A little bit more patience, but the same best practices will yield the results that you would always expect from your email marketing. And that's definitely what we're seeing with our customers. So Brian, with that, I'm sure you have some perspective as well.
Yeah, definitely. And just want to also take a second, thank everyone for joining to yet another webinar hosted by Paul. Thank you, Paul, as well, for always having us, get together. But one of the interesting things that I came across in the last 2 weeks, by the way, so kind of hot off the press, if you ask me, and I don't even know if it was publicly announced yet. If you've heard or followed me long enough, I talk heavily and promote heavily Google Postmaster tools. For anyone who is not using them, this is not a new tool, by the way. Postmaster.google.com. It is a free kind of interface that gives you insight and visibility to the sends that are happening across the Google network from your domain. And it is not real time. It is about anywhere from 48 to 72 hours kind of delayed. But what's interesting here, and this is nothing new, although there's been some changes there, but if you have that platform and you're in there, you would see that. So if you don't have that, go sign up for it. What is new is Yahoo made an announcement that their tool is coming out and is currently in beta. So that is kind of a new thing. And if you're a Yahoo sender, that's obviously something that you would want to be in touch with. They kind of, I was in a session in one of the conferences that I was at recently, and I'm going to butcher his name, and I'm very sorry, Marcel. I don't know if I say it properly. Marcel Becker from Yahoo did say that this has been in a friends and family kind of environment for a while, and now it's officially going to public beta, and that should be anytime soon, like in the next week. So that would be something interesting that you guys should take a look at as well. But I think we're just going to see continued enhancements on enforcement. And one of the things that he touched on, which he's the Yahoo Postmaster, right? He's deeply involved with all mail coming through Yahoo, and it seemed to be aligned in some interesting things. And Paul, I've touched on this in many webinars. I've always wondered, do they actually talk? Do they actually meet? Do they actually get together and kind of align? And the answer was actually answered. Yes, they do. They're competitors, but they have a general unified vision towards, making sure content gets to the right people and that it's what they want. So that they have full alignment on, and they actually do discuss that. And what was interesting is there's definitely more enforcement coming on DMARC. It's going to be shifted out of P equals none for anyone that knows what I'm talking about. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you must go look into this. But DMARC enforcement kind of sitting in this monitoring stage will get a push into the next level, which will be to start to quarantine or reject emails there. So it just looks like there's a lot more stuff and that there's more things happening, and they're really trying to push on the right messages to the right people and things that people want. So I'm sure this is reinforcing a lot of what people are thinking, but if you are wondering, this is what's actually happening at those levels and what they're talking about.
Yeah, and from the ESP perspective, we absolutely understand, that Gmail and Yahoo are really trying to keep the phishing scams and fraud and stuff out of the inbox, and we're fully supportive of that. Our whole thing has always been to our customers, make sure your opt-ins are there. We have automated and humans watching over emails to make sure that they don't look spammy. Many people will do things that they don't intend that will sound like it, could be a scam, from subject lines to links in emails. So across the ESP industry, we're as concerned about this as they are. But the filtering rules that have sort of always been in the background are now really being enforced. And it has been an adjustment for email marketers, but it's nothing beyond what isn't already what I would consider good common sense and best practices for sending email anyway. You want your email to catch somebody's eye. You want them to feel safe and secure when they open it, and you want them to take an action. And this is something that all ESPs, and Brian, I know companies like yours we're always telling marketers, it's about authenticity and making sure someone feels safe when they click on your email.
Sure.
Really good information here. And Kevin, you're just setting up my next question perfectly. You've mentioned a couple times now the best practices. And it's always interesting to me, even email marketers who have lots and lots of experiences, sometimes they need a refresher.
Yeah.
So for anybody out there, no matter what stage of email marketing they're in, I'm hoping both of you can tell us about what are some of those best practices.
Sure. Brian, why don't you start this one? Because I think some of what you guys do starts that whole chain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So to me, and of course I know I'm biased, so I will start with that. But from a biased point of view, it starts with your data. So I don't care what you're sending. I don't care the content. I don't care the offer or the message or your goal or your ROI. It starts first with data and always has. And so the quality of that data being good is very important, and that's very often overlooked, and especially if you're new or you're trying new things. So that's something that I definitely want to kind of press on a bit. I highly encourage people to try new things. I think that's important. I think that's how you learn. I think that's how you grow, whether it's a business department or as an individual. Now, trying new things can come with consequences if you don't understand the risk associated with some of those new things that you don't have all the experience with. And so when we're talking about data and you're doing different things, mainly maybe you're going to trade shows, you're collecting source data there. Maybe you're getting, you created a new registration path for something, you're collecting a lot of signups. Whatever the channel is that you're going towards to get your data, you have to make sure that data, the risk of that data is identified and purged as you need. And so there are lots of different things around what that could be, from spam traps to people that will mark you as spam, to bots hitting your forms, whatever it might be. And there's lots of kind of different things there that really could be, interesting and something that people should pay attention to. And then also protecting the intake of your data. So protecting it, there's things we can do on the forms that really can make sure that the data coming into your whole ecosystem is already kind of clean and in a good spot that you want to send that welcome email to right away. So oftentimes I will see, even in the validation space, of people that are doing validations with us regular, they're doing it though sometimes after that welcome series already happened, because they collected it, boom, welcome email, boom, bounce. That's not a good experience for anybody, by the way. And so catching that up front on the intake, so that if it's a good email, then that's the only time you're going to deliver it. That would be kind of a good one. And by the way, I do want to just encourage great questions to come in, please. We really kind of want to spend more time on your questions than just our own topics. I see some good stuff coming in, especially on warm up, on IP strategies and whatnot. So we'll definitely touch on that stuff. But make sure you have a good quality data coming in. Make sure your forms are protected, and make sure that they're you should have a goalie on your forms. That's how I look at them, right? To just have a form and say quality is better than quantity is powerful, but how do you do that? So put some sort of validation, put a step on the form that's going to block these things. So definitely going to start with data. And then from data, I mean, Kevin, this is really where you're probably going to start to shine. I should really pass it over to you, but it starts with data, and then it goes into reputation and infrastructure and sending, messaging. And Kevin, why don't you take it from there?
Yeah, and this is where I encourage people to use tools like yours, Brian, at Zero Bounce, to make sure that you've kind of validated the data coming into, you say that for any context you're importing into Campaigner or any ESP. But I encourage sort of a routine cleanup. Quarterly is usually a good thing to run a email validation, because email addresses do go invalid. People use them for a little bit and cancel, or people leave a certain position and their email address at work is no longer valid. Whatever the case may be, keeping that sort of cleaning routine in place keeps your hard bounce rates down. And that signals to the Gmails and Yahoos of the world that your list is clean. You know what you're doing. You didn't buy a list and are suddenly trying to send to a bunch of people blindly. So it definitely starts with, from our perspective, it starts with keeping that routine up, so your contact lists are as hygienic as they can be. You touched on authentication, Brian. Obviously, that's a big one for us. We want to make sure that all our clients have their DKIM and DMARC in place, so that the inbox providers can trust that the email that you're sending from your domain is from your domain. So authentication is a huge one, and something that they've absolutely started to enforce So that is one thing. And we will help clients set that up. Any of our competitors in the space will help you get that set up if you don't know how to do it. It's a quick, simple procedure. We are happy to help people do that. And it also protects us as ESPs for our IP pools and stuff coming from us, that we can make sure that we are a trusted entity as well. It's to our benefit and to yours for us all to be on the same page in terms of authentication. And then, from there, it comes down to your sender reputation, which you also mentioned. And that's making sure that your subject lines don't contain certain words that might catch people or might alert, the Gmails and Yahoos of the world that maybe there's something here that might be, nefarious, right? So there are certain words you always want to stay away from. Free is a big one, even though you might be giving stuff away. The word free tends to catch a lot of traps, and certain other things, too many links in emails, that kind of thing. So, for us, it is, and when you're getting ready to send an email from us or from a lot of our competitors, there are certain automated checks that we do, and if we catch something, we'll stop it, and we'll reach out to you proactively and let you know, hey, there's something here that isn't going to work if you try to send this email. And then other times somebody starts to send an email and we notice a high rate of heading into the spam folder. We'll pause that campaign and reach out to people. So I don't want to get too far off track on the mechanics, but if you keep your list clean by doing the validation even once a quarter, if you follow best practices in terms of content and not too many links in emails, and trying to stay away from the spammy words, which by the way, if you go and do a quick Google search, you will get a list of those words to stay away from. So, and I also encourage using some of the free tools out there. If you're not sure, there are tools out there that you can use to check your subject line score and scan your content quickly, and it'll give you a spam score. There's all sorts of tools out there that can help you out. And also a lot of the ESPs now are making use of AI to help you generate content, generate subject lines. I always encourage going back over it to make sure that it's in your voice and says what you want to say, but AI can be a big help in making sure that email appears authentic and keeps you out of the spam folder, which is what we're all trying to avoid, obviously.
Some very good information. Oh, go ahead, Brian.
I wanted to just touch on one thing. So Kevin mentioned DMARC and DKIM. There's another one that is required here that I constantly see, by the way, having errors on people's accounts and on their domain. So SPF records, right. Sender permitted frameworks. This is a basically you're identifying which providers or domains should be able, or IP addresses should be able to send mail from your domain.
Yeah.
And what I commonly see, and this is so common, is that people are, whenever they're introducing new platforms, and by the way, it seems like every platform requires an SPF record now. Mm-hmm. So whether you're using affiliates, whether you're using, like an affiliate platform, a reward system, transactional receipts, reminders on a subscription that might renew and it's coming from your domain, they're all going to ask you to add SPF records. And what I see commonly is that people just add a new one and then add a new one and then add a new one. And now you have 3, 4, 5 SPF records. Just so everyone's aware, that is an automatic flag. You cannot have more than one SPF record. It has to be written properly. And while it sounds technical, it's not that technical. It does just require that it's all in one record. So what I'll see is, I just signed up for this new platform. I moved to Campaigner, great. And I don't want to say Campaigner wouldn't catch this. So sorry, I definitely don't want to give this as a true example. But if you just went through it and you didn't talk to anybody, nobody dealt with it, and you went to some other provider, because that's not fair to Campaigner. They wouldn't let you do that. But if you just did some stuff on your own, you went to, the big name off the shelf service and just signed up for your own account, you didn't talk to anyone, they're going to tell you to set up that SPF record. You're going to set it up. You're going to connect with it. They're going to say, yep, I see it. Looks great. What they didn't realize is that you've had SPF set up for your Google account or your Outlook accounts. You've had other stuff set up there as well. There are tests that you can run on this. We offer them for free because of how important this is, by the way. They're email server tests. It's so important that you make sure that everything is configured properly, because you can actually butcher yourself. And it's unintentional, of course, but it's so common, especially when there's a lot of moving hands. And by that, I mean, and if you're anything like me, like I'm not the CTO, but I want to be in DNS because I know DNS and this is my world. And I know there's other companies like this. So 10 people are over here doing things and no one's completely maybe not aware of all the nuances of that. So you got to check the configuration on authentication. It's very important.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for catching that, Brian. It's like the holy trinity of authentication, right?
Yep.
DKIM, SPF, and DMARC, honestly.
Yep.
And then there is something else while we're on the topic that the inbox providers are enforcing now as well, and that's a one-click unsubscribe. So you have to make it very, very easy for people to unsubscribe. And a lot of those now will be appearing in the header. You'll see the option to unsubscribe. It's especially prevalent in Gmail. I know the personal Gmail stuff I get. So that makes it even more, puts more pressure on email marketers, not like there isn't enough on you already, to catch people's attention at the subject line and maybe the pre-header text, because that option to unsubscribe is front and center. And, not to say that you all aren't great writers and can't write your own catchy subject lines and stuff, but again, that's where AI can also help out. What we've been really talking about here, I think, is authenticity. Having all of the authentication says you're a trusted sender. Having the right content says that the reader can trust you. So it's really about authenticity is one thing. And then the other thing that we'll get into, obviously, and the thing that the providers look for above all is engagement. But I'm sure we'll get into that after. I don't want to take all of Paul's questions out of the way there. So.
Well, you guys are doing a good job. A question is appearing in my mind, and then you all are getting to it. But I did have one question that Manoj asked here, and I'm just going to jump ahead and use one of the submitted questions because I'm wondering the same thing.
Sure.
It's something people are asking a lot about these days, and that's warm-up. Can you walk us through the most effective domain IP warm-up strategy for a new sender starting from scratch in today's environment? Also, which one is better between manual or auto warm-up? Great question, Manoj. What says you guys?
Sure. I mean, I can kick it off. If you have something you want to add here, go for it. Manoj, I saw this question. I'm really glad you asked it. I'm glad we're getting to it. I just posted a link that goes to our deliverability guide where we walk through this. But the question around what's the most effective way, it's about starting slow. It's about building reputation. And generally speaking, we have a whole guide on it, by the way, for each provider, how much you should start with, how much you should jump up. Generally speaking, if it's a brand new domain, that's going to be your step number one. You need to put some age on that domain. You cannot, I don't care what warm-up process you use. If you start sending a lot of or decent amount of mail, and by decent amount, I mean more than a few hundred pieces of mail on a brand new domain, you're going to be on the blacklist immediately. It's very simple, quick whois, look up. They can see the date you bought that domain. They know it's less than 48 hours old or even a week old. And just to be clear, 6 months or more is what you're looking for. So anything with kind of less than 6 months is going to give some rocky area on that. So for anyone who's a planner, plan now for Q4. Let me give you that pro tip. Anything you're looking to do on something that's new and you're thinking end of year, you need to have that domain in your possession by now or by end of next month. So that's one. Secondly, it's really about making sure that what you are sending is also getting some engagement with it, by the way. So you can't just be sending to a bunch of blank, inboxes that do nothing. You need to be able to have some engagement on that. And I think we recommend around 200 emails to start. And then as that builds up over a week, you should kind of consistently stay there. And then you can start to add and ramp up. And it's really highlighted. All this is in the guide. And the difference between manual and auto warm up, I think this is actually a very good question. And I will tell you what I commonly see as which one is better. So I hate it. I hate this answer, by the way, but I always say it depends. And so it depends. Auto is better for the person that is busy, has a lot of things on their plate, doesn't necessarily want to completely focus on this, but knows it's important and wants to make sure it happens. You should be on auto. That you are the ideal person for that. That's why they were built. And there's a lot of people who have experience behind it that are building the auto warm up. So take advantage of that. Now, if you are the postmaster, you are the one sending the mail, you are the one doing all of the hard work, you know exactly what you want, when you want it, how you want it, and when you want to do it, you should stick to manual. Is there an advantage to one over the other? I don't know. I think that they both will be effective as long as you follow the principle, right? And so what you should not do is both. Let me make sure that's one's clear. So do not set up auto and then start doing manual emails behind it, trying to, fast track the system. That's not going to be a good idea. To me, it's preference. It's, are you going to, if you commit to manual, you need to commit. Okay. You cannot skip that day. You cannot skip, oh, we'll just do it next week instead. That's what's going to start to mess it up. That's what they're looking for, consistency. They're looking for behavior.
Yeah. From our perspective, less is more. I can tell you that for sure. So whenever you're coming on to Campaigner or even SMTP, which is our email relay solution, we're going to get you to give us an induction form, and that is going to cover things like the age of the domain. And if you have a history with that domain and you've been sending to Gmail, we want to see the postmaster tools, what the metrics look like in there. We want to get as much of a sense, and also the content you're going to be sending, information about your subscribers, the opt-in, all that stuff. What we really want to do is get a sense for, what you're doing today and what you're going to be doing when you start with Campaigner, for example. And then obviously the most important thing for us to understand is the ultimate monthly volume that you're trying to get to. And then our postmaster team will work with you to build a ramp-up plan that allows you to get there. But following that ramp-up plan is absolutely critical, because the one thing that none of the inbox providers like is surprises. I've seen it many times where we get someone who starts with us and they're following the ramp-up plan and things are going absolutely fantastic, and we give them the go-ahead to increase their volume to the next level, and they get a little bit overexcited and they overextend that. Bang, immediately blocked. Because all of a sudden it's a surprise to Gmail or Yahoo or any of the cable providers or whomever it is, and it looks like spammy behavior. A burst send like that is inconsistent with what you've been doing. It's a red flag for them. So slow and steady is the best way to go, and as long as the metrics are healthy, you'll be able to continually increase the volume a little bit at a time until you're at full ramp, and then life is good.
Kevin, what's full ramp for you guys? How do you guys look at it? What's the kind of number of days or months? How do you guys look at it?
So we look at it as basically the number of emails you want to send in a month, but we look at that across daily sends, and everybody's ramp up plan is different, because somebody who wants to send 100,000 emails a month is different than somebody who wants to send 100 million emails a month, right? So if you're wondering how long it takes to ramp, I have to throw out the "it depends" answer as well, because everybody's scenario is different.
Yeah, I think safe to say, though, in case anyone's wondering, no less than 30 days. I would not have any expectation that you can go to a full ramp in under 30 days. I could argue maybe even 60 is the right number there, but you absolutely no less. You're not going to be sending at full capacity in under 30 days. Sorry, you can, but you're going to hit a bunch of problems along the way of doing that. So
and now if you hit a little bit of a speed bump, we'll call it, the time, it's a setback. It's an absolute setback. It's not a quick remediation and on. It is, we have to take you back a couple steps and try to get things moving again. So from that perspective, Brian, I always think of full ramp personally, not so much in terms of time, but in terms of getting somebody to the volume that they want to get to. The time is really going to be dependent on what that end goal is. But less than 30 days is unrealistic. I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Well, so much of it is about avoiding these, as you called it, speed bumps or obstacles. And on that note, what about the spam complaint threshold? What do people need to know about that as it relates to showing up in the inbox?
Yeah, so the typical spam complaint rate that was sort of always floating out there, but is now being enforced, is the 0.3%. But I'm, more and more we're hearing that 0.1% would be ideal, right? And Brian, I'm sure you're hearing the same thing. So
Yep.
0.3 is enforced, but 0.1 is what they're really striving for. And that's what, one complaint out of 1,000 emails, basically?
Yeah. So the question here is, what do I do about them? How do I prevent them? And that's how I see it, right? If I'm an end user, I look at that and go, 1 out of 1,000 is really not that hard if you really think about it. It's not a unachievable number. That's actually very easy to accomplish, especially if your messaging is incorrect or you're doing some bad practices like burying the unsubscribe. And I have some kind of advice or tips here on this, which is, of course, make it easy to unsubscribe. People hate that comment, and it's just the truth. If someone doesn't want your email, they don't want it. And by the way, sometimes that just happens one day. Something else happened that triggered them to then go, you know what? I've had enough. My inbox is flooded. I've done this. I don't know if anyone else has here, but I've had enough. I'm like, this is too much. And then boom, I just hit an unsubscribe spree, and I spend 20 to 30 minutes going through the last 2 days of email and unsubscribing. And but at that point, I'm also really questioning if I want that content. If I want it, I'm not going to unsubscribe. And then start to ask yourself, why would they be unsubscribing? Are we giving them the content that they want? But if you're sending to kind of lists that you've never sent to before, and where I see this a lot, I was on acquisitions of companies, acquisitions of lists that are coming, mergers, affiliate kind of side, there comes a lot of risk with just trying to shoot a first email out that you think you have good intentions on, which you probably do, by the way, but your audience does not necessarily know who you are, why you're emailing them. And by the way, they start to think that, especially if you don't give them the unsubscribes, this drives me insane with the sales emails, by the way, absolutely insanity. And then you keep sending me more emails. There's no way faster for me to hit the smash the report spam button than not giving me an unsubscribe. So if anyone's on sales, just put it in. We had this obstacle hit us as well, by the way. I want to say that from true experience. We were like, no, because we're sending one-to-one emails. Like, why would they mark us as spam? Well, guess what? One of my users got suspended for spamming because of spam complaints. And it was like, you know what? We got to practice what we preach. And we flipped it on even for our sales reps, by the way. So our sales reps sending emails to customers have unsubscribe links on them, because ultimately, if they don't want your email, they don't want it. So make it easy. And then on top of it, if it's a new list you've never sent to them, in particular, I know Zero Bounce, we are able to identify a lot of those people before you ever hit send. And then you might want to question if you should send to them. So if they weren't expecting your emails, I'm not sure that would be the right time to go shoot them an email. Get an idea of what's going on with the rest of the list first and send to those first. But you got to get those kind of out of your list. And by the way, on that deliverability guide that I shared, there are a few bullet points towards the bottom about FBLs. Okay, FBLs are called feedback loops. For anyone that's not familiar with that, it's a little technical term, but please look through that guide. There are some pro tips in there talking about setting up an abuse at email, a postmaster at email on your domains. And what will happen is they will give you an email back saying who is marking your emails as spam. Do something with that. That's a very, very powerful feedback loop. They're developing these on purpose because best practice senders know to set this stuff up. So check out that guide. There's a lot of great stuff on FBLs, and that will identify the people on your list who are marking you as spam, which, by the way, most ESPs are not really pulling them off the list as a result of that. I can't speak for all. I don't know all. But from my experience, you'll keep sending to them unless you manually pull them off.
Yeah, that's true. Unsubscribes, we obviously flip. Hard bounces, we flip so that they can't be sent to again. But yeah, spam complaint isn't really an action against. It doesn't really say explicitly get me off the list, although that is what it's saying. But the other quick point there, if you make it easy for someone to unsubscribe, you also, in the larger sense, you also leave them a much better sense of your brand, and you might get them back someday. If you make it hard for them and they've got to run a gauntlet to try and find the final link that lets them unsubscribe from those emails, I mean, all you're doing is upsetting them, and it's just better. Make it quick, make it easy. I know it breaks marketers' hearts a little every time somebody unsubscribes, mine included, but make it easy for them, leave them with a good impression going out the door, and you've got a better chance of getting them to come back at some point.
That is so right. I know from my personal perspective, when I get a sales email and I see that that person is making it so easy, like, hey, look, we can drop this at any time, I'm more enticed to want to read, well, okay, let's hear you out. What do you have? Now, what do you guys think about personalization and segmentation? How does that play out in all of this?
For us, it's fundamental. It's something that across the industry, the ESPs have gotten really good at, is giving people means of personalizing emails and easy ways to segment email lists or contact lists based on interest or how they've responded to your campaigns over the last little while or whatever it is, right? For us at Campaigner, we have a nice, robust segmentation engine. We've got all the things that you would want to help personalize email. But it's and I've said this many times, whether I've been at speaking engagements or elsewhere, email, as far as digital communication channels go, aside from SMS or something that lands on your phone, whatever that channel might be, email is a one-to-one communication as soon as you have somebody's attention. If you get them to open your email, it's basically that's all they're focused on for the few seconds or minutes or whatever that they're reading your email versus something going by in a feed on X or somewhere else where there's a lot of activity happening. So if you can take those extra few minutes, and it doesn't take much to personalize an email, even just something just as simple as adding, hello, Paul, versus just hello, is a step that people appreciate. But if you take the little bit of time to personalize an email, you're more likely, and this has been proven over and over again, you will see a lift in conversions on whatever a conversion is to you, whether it's a purchase or a download of a piece of content or a subscription. People appreciate content that's tailored to them. They appreciate the personal greeting, and you can see a lift by as much as 30%, if not more, in the results from your email marketing by taking the time to personalize. And then on the segmentation side, that's really another form of personalization, right? You're creating an audience that all has the same interest. And that's a good thing. So if you've got a group of loyal purchasers, people that have purchased from you, 5 times or 3 times or whatever you define as loyal, you can tailor a message just to them, but you can still take those extra personalization steps to add the greeting of their first name and a few other things, versus people that might be interested in a new newsletter that you've spun up. So it doesn't take much time to set up some personalization elements in your emails or to create a few segments based on interests, and the returns are more than you could hope for, I think, if you do that with some routine. The one caveat I will say is always pay attention to your data, your email campaign data. Pay attention to the opens, the clicks, the unsubscribes, the spam complaints, and watch them with some level of discipline, and pay attention to that, because you'll see shifts in your customers' responsiveness and interest and so on if you keep a close eye on your data. Those are the numbers that are going to tell you if your messaging is still landing with people, or if it's time to maybe find something else to spark their interest. So whereas personalization and segmentation are huge, if you're not also paying attention to the results of that and watching it over time, it will lose its effectiveness like anything else. Audiences' behaviors, people's behaviors in general, shift over time. So what they're interested in today, they might not be interested in tomorrow. What lands with them today in terms of messaging may not land as effectively the next time. So you really have to watch the results and adjust based on what the results are telling you. But personalization, segmentation, anything that hones in on that audience, that gives them a message that they feel like was written just for them, is always a good idea. So if you have those tools at your disposal, use them.
I want to piggyback on it. So to me, I agree, personalization, segmentation, they're very correlated. What I hear a lot is, but Brian, I don't have data to do segmentation on. And first off, I want to take like a step back on that. Challenge that. Okay, so if you're an organization greater than one person, you can challenge that and maybe challenge that to the right people. And I'll give you real examples from Zero Bounce. We recently switched CRMs. And as a result of that, we pushed, I think it's close to 40 data points that are behavioral or intent-based items that are coming out of our platform, our sign-up forms, whatever it might be. And now I'm at a point that we can slice and dice things to such fine degree and put a message in your inbox that is really, really targeted at your behaviors and what you've been doing. And that took time, by the way. I think it's really important to say that that did take time, but it's a long game. So anyone looking for email and looking for the ROI on day one or day zero, that's just not how it's going to work. I mean, sure, throw out a big flash sale. You might get some sales, but email is a long game. And it's about being able to get the right message to the right person. So for example, someone that's, I'm going to use our platform because hopefully a lot of you are familiar with it, but maybe you can figure out how to apply this to your own business. If someone keeps coming into our platform, they were a purchaser in the past, they keep coming in, they keep playing with the pricing page, and I know it's them. Should I spark a phone call? I mean, you want to talk about segmentation and personalization. Phone call, email, and a personalized touch is coming your way within minutes. I'm not talking about you even played with the calculator, right? Or I'm not talking about it. There's so many ways to look at it. Maybe you used our DMARC tool, but you never moved forward with it. Cool. What happened? Did you set it up? Did you have issues? So we can send out those type of messages now that are automated as far as being able to identify you, but they're not automated as far as is there a real person behind that? There are, and it's really just coming down to data. So try to get data points from your, list that would be helpful for you to be able to put those messages in front of them at the right time. That's one way to definitely do it. But on a personalization side, the other part that I see, if it's like a shopping or whatever it might be, the suggested items, use your own data to know. For example, you sell clothes, you know that people have bought this style shirt and then they buy this color pants that might go with it. It's just a bad example and the worst one to talk about fashion, by the way. However, I do know that there's some basic principles that come along with any business. There's generally a and a B that go together very well. And sharing that type of information with your customers is very likely to make them convert. My wife, my gosh, you send a piece of mail like that, she didn't know that bag exists that matches nicely with the shirt. She's on the hook. We're talking about it. I can tell you that. So, there's things like that that are just really important. Use the data that you have. So if you don't have your own data on the customer, which that's a long game, but you should figure that out if you can, use short-term data that you have on your customer base. So there are always a way to do segmentation and personalization, but you have to think outside the box. And it's work, by the way. A lot of people just don't want to put in the work, but it's really important.
Yeah. Even after you have segments built and personalization in place, you have to keep evolving it. So it's never I've reached the end, I'm good. That's not how marketing in general works, but definitely not how email marketing works. You always need to keep paying attention to what's happening, how people are responding, and evolving it over time.
And we'll see it like a business intelligence tool. So I'm in ops and have been working with BI tools my whole life. It's the same thing. Like, you want to just put up sales numbers on your BI dashboard, or the regions they came from, the type of companies they're coming from, how long it took them to win that sales cycle, right? That's where the intelligence, I look at this exact same thing. Business intelligence and segmentation, personalization can go hand in hand. How do you want to see it and break it down?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I have to say, I think that the questions we've been getting are some of the best I've seen from any webinar we've done.
Very good ones.
I'm excited to dive in here. Thank you all for your questions. We're going to do our best to get to all of them. Carl Adamson asks, what's best, a subdomain or a separate custom domain for bulk email?
I don't know that there's a right answer here. I mean, I've got customers who prefer to have a separate domain. I've got customers with lots of subdomains. It's less about subdomain versus, from my perspective, it's less about subdomain versus separate domain and more about your practices when sending from that domain. It's always going to come back to that. and especially on the engagement side, which we sort of touched on, but ultimately what everybody's looking for is, the open rate, yes, but opens mean less than they used to because of, non-human interactions, Apple Mail and caching everything behind a server and making it look like an open. But the clicks, the actual interactions with email, even the negative interactions or what we consider negative interactions, the unsubscribes and so on, shows that somebody's paying attention to what you're sending. So subdomain, domain, I'm going to defer to our postmasters because they will always say it depends on the situation and what we're talking about there. But ultimately, it's still the sending practices. It's still getting the engagement on the other side. It's still doing all the list hygiene stuff we talked about. Being a good sender is being a good sender. You will get just as good a results from a domain versus a subdomain if you're a good sender.
Just one thing that I would add on this is when you say bulk, by the way, that means a lot of things to a lot of people.
Yes.
So when you say bulk mail, I take that as you're sending large batches, and feel free to chime in and clarify on that. But if you're sending, if bulk email means like cold prospecting emails to you, you definitely don't want to be on your domain doing that. However, there's the caveat of now trust as to what is this new domain that I'm seeing that is not from the actual business, and then is this real or is this not? But I think subdomains are good when you're talking about emails that people want and you want to just kind of create the separation. For example, maybe it's receipts, maybe it's support emails, something like that. I think that subdomains are fine, although I'd argue why do you want all the subdomains rather than reply to emails? If you have to, because you have multiple business units, you're a 5,000 person company, all right, fine. But if you're a small business and then throwing everything on a subdomain, I don't know if that's really the right way. Because if you're sending out a lot of these like transactional emails, these are so powerfully good on your domain and your reputation. People are opening them. They're not marking them as spam. They're not unsubscribing. Those transactional emails, if you move them off your domain, you're kind of hurting yourself, if you ask me. And so I wouldn't do it in that sense, but I think it really does depend a little bit on what you're doing, but hopefully that adds some color to the scenarios that at least I'm seeing.
Yeah, totally fair. And if anybody's not familiar with what we mean by transactional emails, think about shipping confirmations, purchase receipts, appointment confirmations, appointment reminders, things that are conveying information that's of importance. And they are, those are the things that typically everybody will allow through to the inbox because they serve a useful purpose.
So this one's from K Chico. Do you have recommendations for improving a poor domain sender score?
Brian, I see you nodding, so I'm going to let you start.
For sure. There's so many things you can do. First off, check the data immediately. If that's going to go back to step one. Are you sending to a bunch of bad emails? Secondly, follow the best practices, but we've talked about all that. If you did this unintentionally, or what I see a lot is this coming from a department kind of sideswipes you. So you get your new sales manager and he just blasted a bunch of email out there and ruined the reputation on your domain. What you need to do is go back to a warm-up process and create good signals and repair it, and understand that that's going to take some time, by the way. And so one of the things you can do, what's really important, sender score is one of those things that's mysterious to people. And I've done talks on the mystery behind sender score. It is not black and white, and it's just a number, and it's a blanket statement across your entire sending to all your recipients. Sender score is built on each provider that you're sending to. And so how they're looking, that's their reputation. Think of it that way. It is I don't have a good analogy, but it is when you show up to Google's inboxes, they have their own reputation on you. And that is different than Yahoo. And that is different than Outlook. And they're building that in their own ways because they're different products. They're competitors. Don't forget that side, guys. And so they might look at you one way and someone else looks at you the other way. Or you might be sending way more mail to Gmail than you are to Yahoo, and you had a different kind of engagement rate or kind of good or bad signal rate. So the way to first off is identify which provider you're having inbox problems with and deliverability problems with, and start to repair it on more of a precision attack. And so if you're having issues with Yahoo, then you need to send to good Yahoo accounts, and you need to send good email that they're going to open and start to engage with you, and ask them to pull it out of spam. And those pulling it out of spam is about the absolute best way to help you quickly get back into the inbox. And so don't feel ashamed about that, of, asking people if you don't find my email, please check spam and pull it out. I think that's fine and normal. And by the way, bad actors on your list can create these problems for you. And so if they're just quickly marking you as spam, it's going to put you in the spam folder. And now everyone's in the spam folder for your sends. And so just understand in that way, attack the actual provider. This is not a one shot that kills everything and fixes everything. You have to know which provider is actually causing the problems on your sends.
Yeah. And look, it may not be, you may not be sure where to start, but you're sending your emails through an email service provider. Reach out, get in touch with support, who can put you in touch with the postmaster team. They can give you some insights as to the root cause and how to go about fixing it. We don't expect you to, oh, my sender score is X, I know exactly who I have to reach out to and exactly what I have to do. We don't expect that. We're here to help get you back on that right track, right? There can be any number of factors that Brian touched on. And if you want an analogy, the only one that comes to mind for me is a credit score. Every credit provider has a different score on you slightly, and they're all different factors that vary in. So reach out to the folks that know how to help you, and that's the postmaster team at whatever ESP you're sending from. I know that here at Campaigner, they are more than happy to help you get back on a right track, because it benefits you, it benefits us, it's just better for everybody.
Yeah. Inbox placement tools are a good way to figure this out. Mm-hmm. We offer that, and there's other people that offer it, but basically we provide seeds to those different providers, and you send the same piece of mail to all of them, and you'll get the results. So you'll see if you're in spam folder for Gmail or Yahoo, and then now you can kind of help identify your problem.
This one comes from Andrea Cordova. How do you improve cold outreach when sending lots of emails for the first time?
So the words cold and lots make me nervous personally. Cold outreach is not something that we'll take here. It's all about the opt-in for us. We want to know that the list you're bringing in is opted in. That being said, there are, I guess, varying degrees of what you would consider cold. Somebody who purchased a list from somewhere on the internet that has no idea what's on it, if you try to send that through Campaigner, we're going to know within the first 30 seconds that we should pause that send and kick you off the platform. The number of hard bounces and spam complaints and things that come in immediately will tell us you have no idea who you're sending to at all. But this is a tough topic for me, because we're all about the opt-in, but cold and lots, think of those as two bad things piled on top of each other, because you're sending something that isn't necessarily expected, and then you're sending a lot of it all at once. If I want to read into the lots, that's going to signal to any inbox provider that something that's happening here is not a good thing, and you're not going to get anywhere with those sends whatsoever, right? Couple things to consider, and Brian, I'm going to throw this over to you. You got a lot more experience in this area, but a couple things to consider are, when you're talking about in the United States, technically CAN spam is an opt-out law. So you can send an email to somebody, but you have to honor their unsubscribe if they say, I don't want it. But if you flip over to Canada or Europe, where GDPR is in place, those are opt-in laws. You cannot send to anybody if they haven't consented to receive those emails from you. And the fines can be very, very hefty, by the way. So, you also have to consider whom you're sending to. But I'm going to pass it over to you, Brian, but the words cold and lots together is a bad combination no matter how you look at it.
Yeah. So we get this question a lot, because a lot of people will get these type of data sources. And by the way, I would consider like Zoom info type data as a cold outreach, right?
Yep,
so let's use that scenario as don't buy the bad list from the Outlook guy sending you emails. Don't do any of that stuff. But if you're using Zoom info, you're using these other tools, which are commonly used and commonly promoted, and I understand why people would want to use them. The first thing to just keep in mind is that, number one, the quality of that data is going to be low. Now, does that mean that everything in there is low? No, but I can tell you with certainty that I'm still receiving emails from an employee, to an employee that is 7 years gone in zero bounce. Okay. And they are saying, I can see you're still the blah, blah, blah. No, we're not. And that person hasn't worked here in a long time. And the emails are being forwarded to me, and I see it and I'm like, where'd you get this from? And then I hear the source. So the concept here is that you have to run this through validation, and you have to be understanding that probably 40 to 60% of that list is going to go right in the trash. And if you're not comfortable with that, don't take these steps. Because if you're sending to the catch-alls or the accept-alls, those are going to cause you problems. A lot of business domains are set up that way. But if you are, how I look at those things those are prospect lists to do more research on and see if they're actually the right person, and then start to handpick them. Go after them on LinkedIn, shoot them a phone call. I'm all about it. Like sales, by the way, I want to show some love towards salespeople, because without them, by the way, we probably all don't have jobs. And so without salespeople, these people are required, and what they do is important. And whether it's just because it's going towards you when you're the buyer, maybe you don't like that, but you have salespeople on your company as well. And so let's just do it the right way, actually find the right people, and kind of don't spray and pray. So I've seen this done successfully. I've seen this done and just absolutely martyred the entire domain. And so, you just have to be careful with it. Make sure the quality of the data is good. And the only way to do that, quite honestly, I don't know another way, unless you're going to start scoring all of everything, validating all that data, but expect to scrub 60% of that list down. And maybe now that's what you actually start handpicking from and taking that route. So that's what I would recommend. And so the word lots and cold, agreed. That's change your approach. It should be cold, but targeted.
This one comes from Bernadette. We have issues with deliverability and established domain, and lots of unsubscribes from previous issues with the email marketing. How do we overcome that?
I want to touch on what was that last part of it? How do we overcome it? Sorry, I'm popping the question back up. And lots of unsubscribe from previous issues with email marketing. I want to touch on that. So, because deliverability is such a big topic, we can go in many different directions. I see this question quite a bit. Like, what do I do with the people that unsubscribed from my list? And I think naturally everyone goes, well, they're gone, and that's it. It's toast. And I think, of course, legally they should be, and they should be on your unsubscribe list, and they should be on your suppression list. However, there's lots of things you can still do with that. Number one, maybe they go make a purchase, and now on that receipt, you also have hey, did you want to opt back in? Right? There's still ways to try to get them back in. When they unsubscribe from your email, they're not unsubscribing from everything. They're unsubscribing from your marketing. So there are ways. Put pop-up forms back on your website and say, hey, see you unsubscribed. Did you miss out on this awesome special because you unsubscribed? Try to get them back in. There's a whole omni-channel approach that could take place, right? That doesn't have to just be email. But of course, you need to honor their unsubscribes, but I do think there's ways to recover it. And I do think retargeting is also another way, trying to get them back onto your website. And maybe it's just a pop-up box that says, hey, see you unsubscribe. Do you want to come back? And sometimes, like I said, I've been in that moment that I probably unsubscribed from something that I didn't really want to, but I was just fed up that day, and I might resubscribe. And there's probably things I've unsubscribed 10 years ago that if they prompted me the right way, I really might re-engage with that. And so you've lost them as an email recipient, but you have not lost them as a potential prospect or customer or someone that you can get back in. So just think outside the box, try to get them back in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've done the same thing. I've gotten an email and it's just a bad day for me, and I don't want to deal with it anymore. But gone from your email list, like Brian said, doesn't mean gone from your brand. There are other ways to re-engage them without trying to send them an email and therefore not honoring the unsubscribe. So I don't have much more to add to that, quite honestly.
This one comes from Kathleen, one of my favorite subjects. She says, seeing bot traffic hitting the website after an email send, how can you prevent this?
I see
Kevin,
a
do you
big
have
smile there, Brian, if you want
I
to go
just
ahead
laughed.
first.
So I heard a hack that it's not mine. I'm not taking credit for it, but I think it's a brilliant idea, which is take one of these days, pull an all-nighter, and send your campaign. You would have to make sure that you're kind of maybe only sending to US or wherever your jurisdiction is. Send an email campaign at 3 a.m, and anyone that opens within the first 30 seconds, think about that. Right.
Yeah.
I thought that was a brilliant hack. And maybe it's not every single one, maybe MPPs coming in, all this kind of stuff. But there's going to be some things that will pop out as a result of that. And I don't know. That was just one way I was like, that's very interesting and a very interesting approach because you can see those metrics generally in real time.
Yeah.
So that's one way that I've thought about it. I've always loved that hack.
Yeah, your email marketing reports will give you some clues for sure. First of all, like Brian said, if you send an email campaign out and you've got a slew of opens in the first 15 or 30 seconds, that's usually a pretty good indication. Now, you touched on MPP, which is Apple. Anything iOS 15 and later, users can enable what they call mail privacy protection, which basically means that before an email lands in a recipient's inbox, it's cached in a server and it appears as an open. But I think all of the ESPs now have user agent reports or some kind of report that can help you identify the Apple opens versus what would be other bots. So you have to do a little bit of digging for sure. But rarely does an inbox land in anybody's email and boom, they've clicked on it and they're already interacting with it. It just doesn't work that way. So there are little clues that can tell you. And listen, bots are a thing. They're going to be a thing, but you can do a little bit of work and sort of figure it out for yourself. But no, I don't think anybody in our industry's really figured out a good way to just flat out say these are all bots and the rest are fine. So they're getting smarter, unfortunately. They really are.
Yeah, definitely. We are going to try to get to as many questions as possible. There are so many good ones. Madison asks, when sending to ultra-lapsed customers with the goal of getting them to click on the email, what should you prioritize?
Okay, so this would depend a little bit on the industry, but I would absolutely, so I'm going to assume ultra lapsed might be 90 days, it might mean 180 days, it might even mean a year, right? Put them all in a segment, obviously, that's a good way to start, get yourself organized. But then, look, personalization is a big one. And then I've gotten some really good ones from brands that I like but haven't engaged with for a while or whatever. Honestly, for me personally, just thinking about it on the other side of it, on the end user side, what might make me click? Yes, personalization is big. An offer may or may not entice somebody if it's an e-commerce scenario or something like that. A little bit of creativity goes a long way, subject line wise. You're really at this point, you're really talking about getting a person who's been tuned out to tune back in. So there's always a human element there. So you're going to look for something a little bit clever in the subject line, especially that might entice them. You might think an offer would be a great way to do it. That really doesn't work for everybody, surprisingly enough. We've tried that ourselves. Look, even when we reach out to customers to incentivize them to give us a case study and we're offering an Amazon gift card or whatever the case may be, it really doesn't necessarily mean anything to anybody. They're going to do it if they want to, right? So personalization is big. Creativity in the subject line is big. And this is where AI can help you if you find yourself a little bit stuck, but ultimately you're trying to get an actual person to re-engage with your brand. And look, there's no magic formula as far as I'm concerned. Brian, maybe you've got a different perspective, but when I think about myself and what might entice me to click, it's going to have to be something that catches my interest. So whether that's a little bit of humor or, a little bit of something clever, creative in the subject line, that's where everything starts, right? And don't ignore the pre-header text, which is usually that little snippet of text you can see in your inbox right after the subject line, because that first sentence or two combined with the subject line might be what you're looking for to get somebody to open the email and engage with your brand again.
by the way, shout out to anybody staying past the hour here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
If and for anyone who's not, we're still going to go through and answer questions. I think of two things, which is emotion. If you can somehow maybe create an emotional kind of concept here, that might be a way to trigger them back in. Or it's just the kind of threat of breakup, right? It's like, hey, this is it. And kind of force a hand of, if you actually are reading my emails and you actually want them to do something here. I've had this concept mentally with our own company as to, should we send breakup emails to old customers that just haven't done anything on the platform or they're whatever. And so, there are ways to think about that. And I think kind of you have to do something. That's what I think. I think if you just kept sending them the email and you get no results, that's a waste. And by the way, I love the term ultra labs.
Yeah,
I've never heard that one before. So yeah, I like that.
Chris King asks, how do you filter out spam activity that affects email metrics, such as open rates and click-through rates? And I think he means, how do you reduce spam activity?
Yeah, maybe that's what I'm getting from that, because, so I have a little bit of an opinion on open rates. They mean less than they used to, for sure. Between the bots that we just referred to, between Apple's MPP feature, open rates are still okay, but they don't mean what they used to. It's more the what I call the engagement rates that really matter, and that's the clicks, that's the conversions, that's the stuff where people actually take an action, a direct action in your email, right? So, but the spam complaint thing goes back to the best practices. Like they're not necessarily related. Your open rates and your click rates yes, I guess in a way, if you're getting a lot of spam complaints on a particular campaign, of course it affects everything else. But in the general sense, and especially from what I see in our metrics, the number of spam complaints really are very small for most people who practice good sending. Like staying under that 0.3% threshold or even 0.1 is not a difficult thing to do. So if you're worried about, or if you're seeing a drop, or you're seeing lower open rates or click rates than you want to, it may not be the spam thing. You might have to look at your content, look at what you've been sending, look at the results historically over the last little while. Are you using personalization? Are you sending the same message to everybody, or have you done some sort of targeting or segmentation? There's a lot of factors that can go into generating a lift in your open and click rates that aren't necessarily related to a spam complaint rate. So, or unsubscribes. Unsubscribes are a great way to tell you whether or not the message is landing. If you see a little bit of a spike in your unsubscribes, it might be time to refresh your messaging. So it's a big question. There's a lot of potential avenues or answers here, but I don't know that spam complaints themselves are necessarily correlated to open rates and click rates, unless you've had some, massive one campaign that went horribly wrong, for example. But then you've got other things that you have to repair on top of that before you can even start talking about the next campaign.
That's a good point. For me, it's the FBL loops, the feedback loops. If you want to reduce the number of people marking you as spam, number one, identify them before you ever sent to them the first time. That's possible. Number two, if they mark you as spam, they should not be getting your emails on and on. So you should be able to reduce that risk, kind of taking that approach. But go back on that deliverability guide, do a search on the page for FBL. We have links to all of them, how to set them up, and get those going. So that's honestly the only real way you can do it on anything like spam related.
So Haley Deekers asks, too many links in emails. Can you elaborate on that? And I'm curious about that too. How many is too many?
Well, from our perspective, or from my personal perspective, there's a couple things to think about here. One is, if you've got more than 2, maybe 3 links in an email, that could be a flag to Gmail or Yahoo or anybody else that you're trying to phish somebody, right? You're trying to get them to click on a link, that you're trying to bury a link that might be used for not so nice purposes, right? But more than that, assuming that your intentions are, wholeheartedly genuine, think about it this way. What is it you're trying to get someone to do when they open your email? And how can you best accomplish that without overwhelming them? Like if I go to a web page and there are like 6 calls to action within above the fold, I don't know what I'm doing there or what I'm supposed to be doing there. That's a bit of an exaggeration, I suppose. But if you send an email to someone and you want them to take advantage of a special offer on a new product that you've launched, for example, you want a singular call to action that hones them in on that, and you want them focused on taking that call to action. So everything in that email should be guiding them to that call to action. You can have it in more than one place in the email, because somebody might see new product launched and they're a big fan of your brand and they're going to click right away. But somebody else who wants to read a little bit or scan down the email to kind of quickly gather some more information will also appreciate a link a little bit further down. But if you've got link, it's overwhelming for a reader and they don't know what to focus on, especially if you're using, different wording to get them to the same link in multiple spots in an email. I'm always in favor of a little bit of breathing room in an email when it comes to design, and it also helps the reader focus in on what action you actually want them to take. So too many links could signal that you are trying to fish somebody and you're trying to hide it. But more than that, from a pure user experience perspective and from your own conversion metric perspective, it can also be overwhelming to someone, and most people don't have the patience to figure it out and they'll just disappear.
I think on the links, to me, Kevin has a really good point, but I look at it a little differently on the sense of too many domains, too many different URLs that might be going out there. To me, that's the bigger issue and something people should worry about. So I think having, maybe a link that goes to men's clothing and a link that goes to women's clothing is fine. What you shouldn't have is links that are going to many different websites or many different URLs. And certainly don't use any of these shortened URL companies that are out there. Those are being immediately thrown in the spam folder because it's very hard to trace. They don't know if this is a fishy email. So kind of get out of that side of it as well. But pay attention to how many domains you're linking to. And by the way, if you ask me, I think social media is a concept here that everyone's got like 30 links at the bottom with every social media campaign or channel that you have. Can I just say something that we should all do? Can we just remove the ones we actually don't care about? And can we just only show the ones that people actually are on and we're doing real work on? Like, are we still on Pinterest? Are we still on some of these companies? Can we get rid of them? Things like that.
Well, there are so many questions. I wish we could get to all of them. If you have a question, and I can say from the Zero Bounce side, we're definitely happy to answer 24/7. We're always there. You can always hit the chat bot and you will reach a live person.
Yep, same for us. We've got phone, chat, email. I'm happy to, if anybody's got burning questions that they want to ask, you can find me on LinkedIn as well. I certainly don't mind taking a little time to have a little messaging back and forth with somebody. So
there's great ones here. Please send me a note with your question specifically, especially if it's about deliverability. I'll be happy to give you a personalized answer and ask more questions, by the way, towards you, so I give you a better answer.
Between Brian and Kevin, you will get an answer. Hit them up on LinkedIn, connect with them, ask any questions. Brian, I'll hand things over to you.
Sure. I mean, anyone who wants to go for an account, if you don't have one already, feel free. We do deliverability, email warm-up, monitoring, inbox testing, kind of all that good stuff. But more than anything, connect with me on LinkedIn. Let's, if we have something that we can actually talk about, I'd be happy to do it with you.
Yep, echoing that sentiment for me as well. And a campaigner, we do offer a 30-day trial. It comes with full support. It's a full featured platform during the trial. We don't hold anything back from that perspective. So if you're looking for a new email provider, give us a look. We'll be happy to help you out.
You said a full 30-day trial?
Yes, sir.
Right. Excellent. Well, Brian, Kevin, you all have been brilliant today. I've learned so much. And folks, these questions were just astonishing. They were so good. I wish we could have gotten to all of them, but thank you guys. And thank you all who tuned in.
Thank you to everyone. Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, everyone.
Paul. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, folks. Thanks for joining us. Have a wonderful day, and we hope we see you on another webinar.